So off we go. So hello, everybody. My name is Amy Sullivan. I'm a steering committee member for Climate Action Santa Monica, otherwise known as CASM. And on behalf of CASM, we welcome you to our 4th annual SAMOCAN, which stands for Santa Monica Climate Action Network. And SAMOCAN exists to foster communication and collaboration to achieve our climate goals. Many of you have joined us before, and it's awesome to see you all joining us again. And we also see a lot of new faces this time, which is fantastic. So welcome to you all, and we have a great event for you today. Just a little housekeeping. So these meetings are usually about 60 minutes long. Today, however, we've extended it by about 15, 30 minutes because it's such an important topic, and it's also pretty complex, and we want to have a little discussion at the end. So we hope you're able to stay for the full time, but totally understand if you need to jump off, and no worries, because we're going to send you a recording of this later. But please, if you have the time, we'd love for you to stay and continue the discussion with us. So little history real quick. The quest for clean energy has been part of Santa Monica for a really long time. And before there was Climate Action Santa Monica even, many residents, including the people who are now part of CASM, advocated for a new model of how we get and how we use our energy. More renewables, resilience, democratic and community-driven energy systems that are also a climate solution. And then in 2015, CASM hosted a forum on energy that was met with a lot of enthusiasm. And then if you fast forward to 2019, the Clean Power Alliance, or CPA, was launched in Santa Monica and in our region, our local LA region. And we are pleased to have about 2 years under our belt with CPA as our energy provider. And so we're going to do a quick poll. You're going to see it pop up on your screen right here. And we just want to know, I'm launching it right here. We just want to know, how knowledgeable are you about the Clean Power Alliance at this moment in time? So we're just going to give you maybe 20, 30 seconds. Just pop your answer in there. Your choices are very, somewhat, a little, or not at all. I see 0 of voting. So nobody's seeing that popping up on their screen.
I saw mine.
Okay. I'll give it
a the votes are happening. We've got about
it's not happening on my screen. This is technology, it's fine. I'll hit end poll and I think we'll see them. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and end the poll. And I'm still seeing 0, so I'm going to share it. But
here, I shared the results here.
Okay.
Yeah. So
my computer failed. I apologize. Such is life in the time of Zoom.
Can everyone see that? The results. It looks like somewhat won by a nose over very. And a little, and we have a few. We have one at not at all. So good.
Perfect. Well, this is going to be a great opportunity to learn a lot more about the CPA. And today we are meeting with Ted Bardacke, who is the executive director of the CPA, and as well as 2 members of the Community Advisory Council. And we also have Kevin McEwen, our former mayor and council member here, who serves on the CPA board, joining us today. So thank you to you all. Now, the purpose of today is to hear from Ted Bardacke about progress, about goals, as well as challenges and opportunities. So our goal is to further develop relationships and dialogue and figure out how we can leverage and coordinate each other's efforts to address the climate crisis and many ways that impacts our community. So we'll spend the first part of our time together, about 25 minutes or so, hearing from Ted, and then we'll meet with Chris Gutierrez and Dave Hockey, the Westside Community Advisors for the CPA, and they will add some more information to the discussion, and then we'll wrap it up with some Q&A. So if you have questions along the way, we want to hear them. We love questions. So I'm sure you all know how to use Zoom, but just in case, down at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a place where you can chat. So pop your questions into the chat box. You can either send them directly to me. My name is Amy Sullivan. It says host, or you can just put them in the general chat, and I'll be kind of organizing them and making sure that if there's copies of them and get them all in place. And then I'll ask the questions to our panel, and we'll go from there. And similarly, if you're having any crazy technical issues, in that same chat box, you can select from a drop down to find my name, and then you can just send a message to me directly, and I will do my best to help you solve your technical issues. And that is how we go from there. And so with that housekeeping done, I'm going to introduce Ted and then turn it on over to you. So Ted Bardacke he's the executive director of the Clean Power Alliance, a locally operated electricity provider for 32 communities and approximately 1 million customers across Los Angeles and Ventura counties. Ted works with the board of directors and CPA's experienced staff to develop and implement CPA's strategy to rapidly decarbonize Southern California's electricity system, provide customer choice and competitive rates, and deliver customer programs that benefit the CPA community. Prior to CPA, Ted worked for Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti, where he was Director of Infrastructure for the City of Los Angeles and Deputy Director of the Mayor's Sustainability Office. Prior to that, Ted worked in the Green Urbanism Program at Global Green USA, and in the 1990s served as a foreign correspondent for the Financial Times of London, based in Mexico City and Bangkok. Ted holds degrees from Wesleyan University and Graduate School of Architecture at Columbia University. He also taught at UCLA's Luskin School of Public Affairs for 10 years. And he currently serves as Executive Committee of the California Community Choice Association, where he actively works on CCA and energy market issues across California. And with that, I turn it on over to you, Ted.
Great, thank you. Hello, everyone. I think the thing that is not in the bio is I was a longtime resident of Santa Monica, worked on Main Street for 10 years at Global Green, at our local environmental nonprofit. And my kids still attend Santa Monica schools, even though we live right under the Santa Monica Airport flight path now in Mar Vista. Yeah, lots of great to see a lot of faces of collaborators and friends over the past year. Before I go, I just, I want to recognize my board member and our council member, Kevin McEwen, also Pam O'Connor, I think is here, who serves as an alternate on our board, and thanks, and a member of our finance committee. So thanks, Pam, for helping us make sure we pay the bills every month. But before I start, Kevin, did you want to say anything by way of welcome to the group? And just because I think it's important that you're here and you've been part of this journey for a number of years now.
Well, this group has broad interests in sustainability in Santa Monica. And there are very few things that we've been able to do that showed such immediately measurable positive results as joining CPA. We had long wanted to have renewable power for the city. And in 1999, we actually contracted to get 100% renewably sourced electricity for all of our city facilities. And for a while, I was able to contract that for my apartment, but then the state changed the rules and it became impossible for individuals. When we were able to throw the switch a couple of years ago and put the majority of Santa Monica on 100% renewable electricity, we cut our greenhouse gas emissions by 17% overnight. And what's even more meaningful, that's an ongoing improvement that doesn't take any further action from people in the city. You throw the switch, the light goes on, you throw the switch back, the lights go off. Contrast that, say, with recycling. When we first put the blue bins into Santa Monica alleys so that recycling could be separated out and taken for free, there was no charge for it, we reduced the amount of landfill by the city by 11%. But that's been an ongoing battle. And if you've been out in your alley lately, as I have, people are a little too lazy to break down their cardboard boxes. And so the blue bins overflow. And when they do, stuff goes back into the black bins and goes into landfill. So that's an ongoing fight, an ongoing educational battle. CPA is a one-time and long-term solution. So I'm really glad we threw that switch.
Thank you, Kevin. And again, thank you so much for your leadership on the board. I'll talk a little bit about Kevin's role a little bit later. But I'm going to pull up a presentation. I'm going to try to keep it, short to maybe 15 minutes, because I really believe, you all we're really interested in community feedback, and part of that feedback is just understanding what's on your mind in terms of questions about us or renewable energy or sustainability in general. So I'm going to try to keep this relatively brief, and then really look forward to the dialogue. So let me share the screen and go here and
Looks good.
do a little, there we go. Is that all good? Do we see it? Excellent. All right, so just, like I said, I want to talk a little bit about Clean Power Alliance in general, but also talk a little bit about the partnership with Santa Monica and continuing the leadership that this community has shown, both within the organization and more broadly in the community. So just quick snapshot of Clean Power Alliance. I really believe that not only have we been able to do a lot of things very quickly, but we're kind of showing and breaking ground of what the clean energy future looks like. So just at the top line, we are the nation's top provider of 100% clean energy. That means we have more customers on 100% renewable energy rate plans than any utility in the country. And in fact, if those customers were just a utility amongst themselves, that would be right around the 100th largest utility in the country, just our 100% green customers. So we're doing stuff both locally, but also really at scale. And I think that, as we've seen, it's this marrying of local action and impact at scale that really is important about a driver for organizations like us. More broadly, we serve 1 million customer accounts in Los Angeles and Ventura counties. So I've mentioned this 285,000 customers on 100% renewable energy rate plans. Because of this customer demand, we've met California's clean energy targets 10 years early. So that's, the state law says 60% renewables by 2030. We were 60% renewables in 2020. So that's 10 years early, among the most ambitious targets already in the country. And it really goes to something of a hallmark of Clean Power Alliance, which is really, we consider compliance and mandates to be the floor, not the ceiling. And most, the investor-owned utilities tend to see compliance as the ceiling. They met it, they're done. We stand on those compliance requirements and try to reach further faster. We've got some greenhouse gas numbers there. Through our now 14 long-term power purchase agreements, we anticipate creating 2,500 good paying union family sustaining jobs in Southern California. And we're really these days quite along on a kick of not just expanding renewable energy, but with a real focus on reliability. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that more, just with what happened in Texas, what happened last August with our grid stress here. I think that, as you could ask former Governor Gray Davis and, our current governor, Gavin Newsom, the one thing that could trip you up in terms of your political and policy goals, a thing is the lights to go out. And if we want to continue to really push the envelope on renewable energy development, we're going to have to keep that core value, not just value, but sort of physical reality in mind. And I'll talk a little bit today about what we're doing. And then I want to note that we do make some money we're a nonprofit, but we do make some money beyond what it costs to pay the bills, and we are reinvesting those extra revenues back into local programs, which I'll discuss later in. So again, just to emphasize, for us, really, compliance is the floor, not the ceiling. And it's been, real efforts by local community leaders who have been able to really choose some of our higher renewable energy projects that enabled, or higher renewable energy rate products that enabled us to hit that 60% goal last year. So just a sense of our service territory. We go as far north and small as Ojai, and as far south and small as Hawaiian Gardens, and a lot in between. But what I want to note is it's a very, very, very diverse customer base, a diverse set of communities. To see Beverly Hills and Malibu and Calabasas, banding together with Temple City and Paramount and Carson into a joint action has been really, frankly, beautiful to watch at the board level, and creating new connections around reliably serving all of our communities with, regardless of income level, with a good supply of renewable energy. It also, makes my life quite interesting because every one of these communities has a member on the board. And so I work with a 32-member board of directors, which is quite fun. And Judy Abdo can tell you how fun it is to work with a large board like that. But we tend to be quite collegial and not have many split votes. It's been a nice culture to see emerge around the board around this common mission. So just, I saw that a lot of people kind of knew how we work, but I just want to sort of set the basics. So on the left-hand side, you can see Clean Power Alliance. We buy energy from suppliers. By and large, these are private sector suppliers who have developed resources across the Western United States. And we enter into short-term contracts and long-term contracts to buy energy. We then schedule that energy and put it onto the grid, which is run by the California Independent System Operator, and through transmission and distribution that is owned and operated by Southern California Edison. And then Southern California Edison delivers that energy to our customers. And what that essentially means is that when you're a customer of Clean Power Alliance, you don't stop being a customer of Edison. They're now joint customers of Clean Power Alliance and Edison. It's just on your bill, you pay part of your bill to Clean Power Alliance for the electrons, and part of your bill to Southern California Edison for the lines and the wires that distribute and deliver that electricity. So those were actually always two parts of the bill, but now the who gets the revenue from those two different parts of the bill goes to different entities. It means also that we have a really interesting relationship with Edison, in the sense that we compete with them on, price and environmental benefits of the electricity that we put onto the grid, and yet we're partners with them when it comes to delivering that and billing and all kinds of other services, and even some customer programs. So one of the reasons that many customers don't know about us is the bill is still branded as an Edison bill. That's brings some benefits and some branding difficulties for us. But in terms of that idea that Kevin raised of, just flipping the switch, we didn't have to go out and put in new meters. We didn't have to do anything that was really disruptive to people's lives in order to make this switch. So on the right, it's just, basic or value proposition is, high environmental impact, good community benefits, giving customers new choices that are cheaper or more expensive or more have more environmental value or whatever, but just choices that didn't exist before, and all with the benefits of local control. And local control is kind of, it's a buzzword, means different things to different people. It certainly means different things in the area of, say, housing or zoning. But here, what it a lot has meant, in addition to, having a board of directors made up of local elected officials, it means that we've been able to imbue in many of our decisions what we consider local values around paying attention to disadvantaged communities and equity, around environmental stewardship, around how we treat, workers, and how we are a force for good in terms of workforce development. So that's essentially how I think local control has played out in our organization. 3 rate options: lean power, clean power, 100% green power. Our customers can change their rate at any time. They also have different price points. Typically, lean power has been a little bit cheaper than Edison, not that much, but a little bit. Clean power has typically been at parity, and green power has been 100% green power, which is what the majority of Santa Monica customers are on, comes typically at around a 9% premium. Again, we allow our customers to change their rate at any time, but we don't see people changing rates very much. Typically, what happens is when there's a cutover, the city has chosen, the city in which people are residents choose what the default level is. Santa Monica chose 100%. Most people stay with that. We don't see a lot of movement across, but we continue to offer it. So yeah, just a little bit more about the Santa Monica experience. That default green rate, we gave each of our cities the option, each of our 32 cities the option to choose what the default rate would be as we launched. And 10 of the cities chose, including Santa Monica, with a unanimous vote by your city council, chose the 100% green level. And we continue to have almost 97% of the customers have stayed with Clean Power Alliance, and most of them stayed at the 100% for the last 2+ years. And that tends to be the story across the organization. What the community's default level is tends to be what people do. We don't have a culture in California of people switching electricity providers the way they switch cable companies or cell phone companies, or like in Texas, where people switched electricity providers all the time. It tends to be pretty sticky with the customer. And I just want to note that, the leadership on the board that Kevin has shown, a little bit of history. Santa Monica went through a pretty significant evaluation process of what about what organization to join or to try to do a CCA on their own. This was before I was with the organization, but it was just in formation. And they even commissioned a report from UCLA to try to figure out, should we go it alone? Should we do a smaller sort of West Side thing, or should we try to jump in bed with LA County and this broad organization? And I think one of the choices that was made was, let's go into the big organization because we think there's an opportunity to take some of Santa Monica's values and essentially export them to the broader region and have a real influence across Southern California. And I think that's really played out in some of the things that some of the decisions that we've made, and in particular with Kevin as chair of our energy committee, bringing those values to a leadership a role. And it's been really, really important. I mentioned local programs. We did a local program strategic plan that was approved by the board last June. And we're really promoting programs in 3 areas. One is resiliency and grid management. I want to highlight that number 1 there, called our Power Ready program, which is in response to PSPS, public safety power shutoffs, and heat events and potentially rolling blackouts. Our goal is to install 1 clean energy backup power system in an essential or critical facility in each one of our 32 member agencies at no upfront cost to that community. So this might be an emergency operations center, a city hall, a water pumping station, something that really supports stuff in an emergency, or a library or a cooling center or a community gathering place, a place where people go in times of stress, of community stress. And I think this is responding both to the climate mitigation efforts, but also the climate adaptation efforts that our region is going to have to pursue. Around electrification, we do believe in the future is mostly electric, and want to put wind behind the sails of EV charging and building electrification. I'll note that EV charging is really about publicly accessible EV chargers, because we know that, yes, probably if you have a Tesla, you could probably put a charger in your garage or in your driveway, but that leaves out lots of people who would like and perhaps can afford an EV, but live in an apartment or in a place where they can't, or are a renter and can't put a charger in, and we need to expand out the publicly available charging infrastructure. And then in local procurement, we've got 2 programs rolling out. One that actually rolled out this month, Power Share, where we are providing 100% clean energy and a 20% bill discount to low-income customers who reside in disadvantaged communities. This is a partnership with the California Public Utilities Commission, and hope to get 7,000 customers subscribed in that program over the course of this year. And then doing more locally developed projects through a community solar program that we're still working on the program design. So one thing that we've done over the past 2 years is we've really worked to not just supply renewable energy to our customers, but expand the supply of renewable energy throughout the state. And we've signed 14 projects for solar, wind, small hydroelectric, and increasingly storage. The storage piece is just so super important as the resources on the grid become more intermittent. We need a place to store that energy when it's cheap and clean, and discharge that energy when energy is more expensive and coming from dirty fossil sources. So we opened 2 projects at the end of the year. White Hills Wind, it's a 350 megawatt wind project out by the Hoover Dam, and Rosamond, which is a solar project right up in right at the border between LA and Kern County, just past Lancaster. We've got a few more projects coming online, the ones in orange, and including 3 standalone storage projects. These are projects that just help us manage this intermittency, and I'm going to show a little video of one of those storage projects that comes online. Let's see if that worked. Are you seeing the video come up? No. Let's see here. Let's try that. Yes? Okay.
Johanna energy storage system will deliver 20 megawatt hours of clean energy storage to the grid. As more and more intermittent power from wind and solar is added to the California grid, energy storage projects become increasingly important to ensure reliability. The Johanna project will give CPA a storage source of renewable energy to help us meet demand at times when other sources of renewable energy are scarce and costly. As a result, CPA's contract with Hecate Energy will bring new, reliable capacity to California.
All right, so back to there. And I just, I want to, we, as an organization, we're making big bets on batteries. And that's, really important to keep us on track for the renewable energy future that we want to see. We are now the 3rd largest purchaser of battery energy storage in the state of California, behind only PG&E and Southern California Edison. Last plug, there are eligible customers here in Santa Monica for our Power Share program. That's 100% renewable energy at a 20%, along with a 20% bill discount. We're very proud of that program and think it embodies some of our core values of clean energy for all. So with that, I will stop. You could follow us in our different places, and happy to open it up to questions and discussion.
Beautiful, thank you, Ted. I think we're gonna have Chris and David talk for a minute.
Okay.
I just wanted to. That was fantastic, very knowledgeable, and to everyone, I've seen a ton of questions go through in the chat. I know Kevin's been taking part in answering some of them, but I've been recording them all. So we'll.
105 freeway to 605.
Oops, somebody came in unmuted, and we'll get them all fielded to you in a few minutes. But first, I want to turn it over to David Hockey and Chris Gutierrez, and they are. I see David up there.
Can you hear me?
Yes, there you go. Hello.
Hi, thanks. Thanks, Ted. Thanks, Amy, for hosting. Thanks to Chris Gutierrez, my wonderful friend and fellow co-conspirator, for organizing the event today. I'm so thrilled to be with you today and to be part of this very important conversation about CPA's innovative and remarkably effective approach at getting us to 100% renewable energy much faster and better than anyone thought would be possible. And so huge thanks also to our hero, Kevin McEwen, who took the risk that, he might have to hear from some angry ratepayers, but was willing to commit Santa Monica residents to pay just a little bit more on their electricity bill to enjoy the benefits of 100% renewable energy. Who would have thought that the vast majority of our 100%, customers would not opt out or opt down, even though they could do so at any time. And it's been happening at so many different cities now in LA and Ventura counties, thanks to Clean Power Alliance. And I'm just to mention, I'm the chair of the Community Advisory Committee. One of the big things that Clean Power Alliance has done is to be very intentional to have a robust and meaningful engagement process and communication effort with the community. That's because they're breaking the old big utility paradigm. It's not just about delivering power. It's about creating local programs that allows Clean Power Alliance to reinvest and reengage in our communities, empowering ratepayers to be part of the solution, and democratizing energy. As Michael Brune of the Sierra Club says, to change everything, we need everyone. And so part of that is our Community Advisory Committee, and I'm really proud of our Community Advisory Committee. CPA worked very hard to recruit a very talented 15-member Community Advisory Committee, which includes folks like the former mayor of Manhattan Beach, the Assistant General Counsel of LADWP, and the Environmental Sustainability Administrator for NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab, who, thanks to the recent rover landing, is one of the few people who can say that she's working on sustainability on multiple planets. So we have quite an esteemed and effective group, and I'm really proud to be part of that. I'll turn it over to Chris.
Hi, everyone. It's really a joy to be with all of you in the SAMOCAN. And thank you for helping us pilot a different kind of community engagement where we're bringing together leaders in community-based organizations, leaders as community members from a diverse multi-generational outreach. And we do that because today we want you to also think with us and take home and then feed back to us how you can all enlist your efforts as organizational leads or wonderful networked people to advance the Clean Power Alliance's climate solutions very robustly. I love that David mentioned that our aspirations are also cosmic because we are the Community Advisory Committee representatives for the West Side. David and I represent 5 communities, including Santa Monica and Culver City, Beverly Hills, Malibu, and West Hollywood. And that's important because we are the community in community choice aggregation. And so all of us together here, or all throughout the 31 respective agencies, are creating together. What does it mean to democratize energy? That's a powerful purpose of the CAC, to bring the understandings and the views of the community from disadvantaged communities to highly supported communities, whatever their language background, whatever their personal experience or their residence or commercial entity may be. So that we've made such a inroad is really empowering. You saw the kinds of things that we advise on with Ted's laying out the local programs, the different sourcing for renewable energy. We as a Community Advisory Committee meet every month, which are open meetings. Those are live streamed and we'll connect you for any of you who are interested. And we meet to discuss some of those operations, to give the board and to give the staff our input. We help shape those local programs. One that wasn't mentioned wonderfully is a scholarship for community college students who are going into the energy field. And we have very animated discussions about what does it mean to really empower and basically help people rethink that, yes, Kevin, we did a light switch move here, but energizing our work is more than turning on the light switch. It's how we respond on the demand response. It's how we think about solar coming into different communities. It's how we collectively think about making our grid more resilient, et cetera, et cetera. And so the Community Advisory Committee is here for you, but it's also, we need you. And that's why SamoCan was delighted to pilot this effort, because we're hopeful that Clean Power Alliance can take this model and then perhaps by Earth Day or soon thereafter, engage lots of CBOs, because each of the 15 members of the Community Advisory Committee also represent different CBOs, community-based organizations, as well as working environments or particular communities. But that's who we are, young and young in spirit, and it's great to be with you. Amy?
Thank you both, David and Chris. And now we're going to turn it over to Q&A. So I have quite a few. I love all the enthusiasm here. So you guys, let's see.
So maybe Amy, maybe I think Kevin's been doing a fabulous job of answering a bunch of this in real time, but maybe I can maybe just respond to a few things in there or shed some light on those. Is that all right?
Sure. Okay.
So there was a really interesting question of like, you got to 60%, is the next 40 pretty easily? Is the next 40% going to be harder? Which I think is a great question that we're grappling with at statewide, but also increasingly other states in the West. I would say probably the next 20% to go from 60 to 80 isn't as, is probably reasonably easy, quote unquote. It's that last 20% that is going to be hard to wring out of the system. And that's really about getting enough new generation that can, and storage to get us through the nights. And it's not just one night, but it's night after night after night if we happen to have had a week of clouds and we're not getting a lot of generation every day to fill up those batteries. How do we get through the night? So that's where geothermal resources will start to come into play, batteries or other storage technologies that can last not just for hours but for days. There was a
Oh, wait, I have a question. So we have another question that actually like piggybacks on that one. So along those lines, what are the most high impact steps that the CPA can take to reduce the emissions? Like what are the most important things to get through that last 20% that you
I think we go through this exercise when we go through procurement. We recognize we're in a competitive environment, so we have to make sure that we're not too much on the bleeding edge of new technology, because we need to continue to be competitive in our rates. So I would like to see us get to piloting some new things, but I think we're going to need to be a little bit more mature and have a little bit more money in the bank before we take those kinds of risks. Hopefully we can get to the 80% with that in mind, and then start to look at some other things. Compressed air storage is one that I'm interested in. There's a variety of things that we could do. I think the other thing is that I would really like to make sure that we continue not just to think about the broader grid and how we get to 100, but also, keeping resources in our local communities, and that means investing in the storage locally and that could, have a bit more of a higher price tag. Putting these backup power facilities in our local communities, so that we're thinking about adaptation as well as mitigation at the same time. There was a question about expansion in Inglewood and Torrance, and other communities. We're always open to conversations with communities who would like to join Clean Power Alliance. Right now, I would say in the midst of a pandemic, it's not high on a city council's priority list, except for a couple of unique cases. But I think as we, continue to demonstrate a track record, we'll continue to attract new players. But it requires a vote of the city council, as well as a vote of our board. And I think councils right now are just a little bit distracted with other things. Totally understandable. There was a question about EVs and getting stuff into, apartments, and, so the EV charger program that we're going to be rolling out in conjunction with the California Energy Commission is very explicit that the chargers have to be publicly available 24/7. And so what that means is, we're probably going to be targeting more places like supermarket parking lots, parking garages, and workplaces. And I think some of what we're seeing in the EV charging space is that apartment dwellers and renters are likely to be charging outside of their homes, like where they drive their cars to. And that's actually not a bad thing for the grid, because that's when there's a lot of solar providing cheap greenhouse gas free power to the grid. But I think we're starting to see enough EV penetration out there that we're seeing different kinds of people charge in different places, and we want to make sure that those who need the publicly available ones have access to it. Trying to think, Amy, what else did you see pop up?
Well, there was one question that talked about all the different players that are involved. So it says there's many actors in delivering electricity: CPA, CAISO, CPUC, SCE. Are there areas of duplication? Are there any key activities, demand response, care, low income programs that should be carried out by one entity rather than multiple, just in general?
Yeah, we're experiencing, as Chris mentioned, a democratization of the energy space in California, which means, there are more players than there were in the past. And that's on top of the fact that there were a lot of players already. So it can get very confusing, and sometimes makes, my head ache. But I do think that the idea behind the question is really important. I think what we're finding is that certain entities are good and better at doing certain things. We basically, we buy power and we sell power and we deliver local programs. And I think we're well set up to do those things. And I think, the CPUC, which in the past has been around regulating monopolies, is not so good at creating good markets for all of these proliferating players, and they need to change. But I think the degree to which people can be really good at the things that they're set up to do, and then collaborate, is probably a better approach for the long term than kind of what we have right now, which is many people trying to do the same thing. That's just a organizational challenge that I think we'll continue to see in California for probably forever.
Okay, and then we have a lot of questions about solar panels.
Okay.
So just to kind of summarize, there's we have abundant sun. it kind of goes into like multiple questions. We have abundant sun in Southern California, and there are many people who would be willing to put solar on their roofs, but the payback period is too long. So there's net metering. Will that be under attack over the next year and make that harder? There was also a question just how confusing it is on the bill of how the back and forth billing. I think that was, and then I think there was one more. Interest in moving to widespread solar will depend on people being able to sell excess energy to generate back to the CPA, as opposed to simply zeroing out their electricity bill. And then will it be possible for the CPA to design a distributed solar friendly rate?
Yeah, so let me take that in sort of three parts. One is just sort of the logistics and the billing. The two is where we're at now, and then the third is sort of where we're going. The logistics and the billing is we have a bit different model than the IOUs about when we true up we true up on an annual basis, and really we designed that because lots of solar customers who weren't zeroing out their bills, but going halfway, were getting large unexpected bills at the end of the year. They could track it along the way, but there was some sticker shock sometimes, and we just want to make sure that folks at the end of that true up period are able to pay their bill if they have one, or get some excess back. So that's why we did that, and so far it seems to have, after a transition, seems to be pretty successful. But I know that there were some challenges in communicating with our solar customers right away in the beginning, but I think we're in a better place now. For those who generate actually more than 100% over the course of the year, we offer a better deal than Edison does on that net surplus energy, about 10% more, to reward those customers who have that, been able to make that investment. Now, where we're going, I see, people have picked up on the fact that there's a proceeding going on at the California Public Utilities Commission that is looking to pretty dramatically alter how solar is net metered solar is compensated in California. And that really has to do with, what I think is a pretty significant inequity in terms of who's able to make that large upfront investment and who's benefiting from those subsidized rates. We've not engaged in a policy discussion with our board yet, and this is going to be one where we're really going to rely on our board. What I will say is that, to the extent that we still offer generous subsidies to net metered customers, I really want to push customers towards also investing in battery storage in addition to their solar. Because again, right now there's a lot of great solar generation in the middle of the day. We need that renewable energy at night. And so I really, again, this will be on the policy side, really much a board decision about what stance to take on net metering 3.0. I hope we're able to find a way to really encourage the battery storage to go along with the solar.
Do you think there's anything in there, I'm speaking as a personal solar customer too,
Yeah,
will help decrease the cost of that battery so it becomes a more affordable option for people?
Yeah, so, battery costs are on the same price trajectory as solar was 10 years ago. So we've seen, 60, 70, almost 80% reduction over the course of the last 5 years. And I continue to see that price coming down. And that price will come down further if we can find some domestic sources of lithium. which is the main chemical component of the batteries that most people would put in their homes. There's a big effort in the state of California to extract lithium via geothermal generation out by the Salton Sea, and to create a whole new manufacturing ecosystem around that. So I do see the price of batteries coming down. I do see continued and future subsidies for batteries as well. But I think where we put the subsidies is likely to be going in the battery direction, and potentially at expense of some of the subsidies that have been for straight out solar, which I do believe can compete.
Nice. Okay. We had multiple questions about other clean energy sources. So someone had asked about hydroelectric power. We had a question about nuclear power, and then green hydrogen.
Okay, so let's go, sort of old to new, or least desirable to most desirable, or something. No, that doesn't work either. Nuke, the board took an early decision, and then reaffirmed. The board took an early decision in 2018, one of its first policies, to not have nuke in the portfolio. Southern California Edison does have a significant amount of nuke in its portfolio, coming from the Palo Verde generating station in Arizona. And then the board reaffirmed that decision in last year, even in the face of Edison saying, hey, would you like some of that nuke for free? So this was an area where financial values and environmental values were at cross purposes. And by a unanimous vote, the board stuck with the no nuke policy, even though we could have gotten some of the nuke for free. So you could just sort of see where some of the, and again, Kevin was pretty active in that policy discussion. Hydro. So we contract with specific hydro sources that are 30 megawatt hours or less, 30 megawatts or less, which are typically what are called run of the river hydro sources that don't involve large reservoirs or big dams. There tend to be, along the side of a river where you can take the flow of the river to turn a turbine, rather than putting it behind a dam and dropping it through a turbine. So we do have that kind of hydroelectric in our portfolio. And then we do buy large hydroelectric as a supplemental low carbon source to our renewable energy. It's out there, it's sunk cost. We don't emphasize it very much because we know there are not people out there building new big dams. In fact, it's going the other way. And we really want to procure the stuff that's going to spur the new development of new renewable resources, which is solar and wind and geothermal and other things. Green hydrogen. Really becoming I've been in the business long enough to know that green hydrogen has been 5 years away for the last 20 years. It's still about 5 years away. It's good to start planning for maybe that eventuality. Still quite costly. And just the idea behind it is that instead of using, fracked gas to create the hydrogen, is you use electrolysis with the energy from renewable sources. So we'd use, instead of putting some of our excess solar into batteries, we'd use it to create hydrogen, and then use that hydrogen to power, vehicles or homes, or repurpose natural gas-fired power plants to run on that green hydrogen. A lot of work to be done in that area before it's a proven out technology, and a lot of unanswered questions about the environmental, the ultimate environmental footprint of it. I would say that from a political perspective, I am a little bit concerned that the green hydrogen is a stalking horse for the continued expansion of natural gas infrastructure, because you could see a situation where some of that natural gas infrastructure was used to put a little bit of green hydrogen in it, and that being used to, make as a justification for maintaining that larger natural gas system. So it's just, it's not a big concern right now, but it's always something in the back of my mind that I wonder about unintended consequences of making a big bet on green hydrogen at this point.
Sure, that makes sense. And I'm seeing a question that's kind of similar along that line. So you talked about the political aspect of it ending up green hydrogen turning into still being stuff that supports policies and infrastructure for the old way of doing things. We had a question saying fossil fuels are supported by policies and infrastructure already that give a decided advantage over renewables. Are there any changes like that we, and this, we're going to start to like transition into our discussion here too with these questions too, but are there any changes that could level the playing field? And we had a similar, comment / question about carbon pricing, so maybe add that in there. How would the price on carbon impact the work of the Clean Power Alliance? And
yeah, so I mean, the really good news right now is that CPA can contract for a solar plus storage project that will provide clean power for 16 hours a day or more for less than the price of that it would cost to build a new natural gas plant. So I mean, we've shattered that price barrier. There would be it's very difficult to see someone going out to build a new natural gas plant to think that they're going to compete with renewables. We can do that today. The cost barrier that we haven't gotten past yet is for all those old natural gas plants that are already out there and the investors have already been paid their money back, and it's just, it's all sunk cost and amortized now. We haven't been able to yet have the 100%, that solar plus storage beat that price of an existing natural gas plant. That power is still cheaper. So what that means from a sort of a political and regulatory place is we need to be continuing to push to phase out from a policy perspective those natural gas plants that benefited from those long-term fossil fuel subsidies that happened for decades. There's been a little bit of a recent backsliding at the PUC about allowing some old gas plants, the State Water Board, allowing some old gas plants to stay online longer than we expected, or even make new investments into rehabbing some old plants. And that just sort of prolongs the time that we're going to sort of shatter through that price curve. So I think the retirement of the old plants that we can't yet compete with is as much a policy and regulatory thing as it is a markets or economics thing.
That's an interesting, that we also had a question about, like, currently it's still a little bit more expensive for us as consumers. Will energy ever become the least expensive option? And it sounds like you've answered that it will eventually when we change those policies and are able to phase out those old things, because we're already able to produce the energy for cheaper. So I'm going to when we're thinking about, groups like Chasm and us as individual consumers of electricity, when we're, how do we start the discussion, and what can we do as individuals and small groups to start advocating for selling the idea that it still makes sense? There's a climate crisis. It still makes sense to pay a little bit more now, knowing that soon it's gonna be the cheaper option, and the more of us adopting it is going to help push the policy that's going to push it to being cheaper for everyone sooner.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I think has been, as we talk to regulators and policymakers in Sacramento and San Francisco about the Clean Power Alliance story in particular is that the fact that people who were defaulted in at 100% renewable energy have stayed with it really has demonstrated an intense customer demand for it, and by consumers, and that carries actually weight in the policy discussion, that people are willing to pay a little bit more right now in order to advance that clean energy transition quicker. Gives us some like real world experience when you go in and you say to a regulator, look, if we could just expand solar and storage and wind and geothermal more quickly, people would buy into that rather than sort of trying to hang on to the last vestiges of the fossil fuel economy. But I mean, your consumer power matters. And then I think the other thing is to just in many ways the electricity system is it's opaque, it's complicated, multiple players, and so sometimes it's hard to find where the political activism should be directed. And my sense is what would help clearly CPA, but also the competitiveness of renewable energy sources and moving quicker, faster, is real attention on making sure that that transition takes place in the quickest way that we can, while still staying reliable, and not sort of backslide because of political headwinds. I think, Amy, you're still on mute. There you go.
I just wanted to take a moment to, when we're talking about what everybody as an individual can do, Lorraine popped in the chat. There's a survey that the city of Santa Monica put out that helps the city set its priorities. And so again, talking about what the individual can do, I'm going to pop it at the top of the chat as well for everybody. So if you are in the city of Santa Monica, you can take that survey and that helps move thing along. Let's see. Lorraine, or Chris, did you have anything that you guys wanted to add as far as, looks like Lorraine wants to talk about group discussion of.
Well, I wanted to someone had emailed me about actions that people can take. And so I want to reinforce the link that we just put in the chat because I know people are going to be going soon. Please speak up on the issues that are important to you by taking that survey. Also, put Climate Action Santa Monica in your address book if you're not there, because you might not be getting things from us. And person who's here on the meeting, I think Ethan Sensor had asked me if we were going to mention the Playa del Rey gas storage facility. That is an issue that CHASM is currently working on. And while it might, it's connected to what Ted is talking about, maybe wanted to just pass that to Ethan for a second if he's still here.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Lorraine. I think we had talked about this on one of the past SEMOCAN things. I wanted to make sure everyone got an update. I'm sure a lot of you know about the Playa del Rey gas facility, which is just outside the borders of Santa Monica and fits into all of the conversations that we were just having. Just this past week, maybe just actually this past Monday, Culver City Council voted on a resolution to call on the state to shut down the gas facility. It's got to go through the council one more time just as like a formality in terms of getting the resolution actually pushed through, but the language was all voted on. So that's really exciting. And I think it's the first municipality to be coming out in support of closing down the facility as opposed to doing a feasibility study, which we saw LA County do back last year. So we do know that this that a similar issue and discussion is going to be happening in Santa Monica on March 15th. The environmental task force is going to be considering that idea of sending, I believe, a letter to the governor from Santa Monica. So we definitely love to keep everyone updated on that, and hope people could turn out for that. And we also have a sign-on letter, which we're pulling together, which would love to share with people on the email listserv, and hope that your organizations can sign on in support of that as well.
Thank you,
So some
Ethan.
exciting news, and yeah.
It's great to hear all these connectivities. And Kevin, we see you come in. I just wanted to make sure that everybody knows how to reach me. I put my my email, and for those of you who've reached me at Chris Peace, we're shifting over to Gmail on many things, so it's in the chat. But I also wanted to help you understand that one of the individual things we can do and all the groups that we have. SamoCan is a collaborative effort. If we're trying to really build the CPA in a robust way, it's getting the word out about the rebates. Thank you, Kent. We have some information and messaging on that. It's sharing at your local CBO opportunities to channel some of our social media messaging, which we'll do a better job on sharing with you. It's all kinds of possibilities, and you have lots of ideas yourself. So keep that in mind, and as we follow up with you, we would love to hear from you. Kevin, you wanted to add?
Well, yeah, I wanted to go back to what Ethan was talking about. I'm very aware of that gas facility near Playa Vista because I've been a Bayona wetlands activist for 25 or 30 years. That is appearing to drive some of the plans for the so-called restoration of the wetlands as well, to keep that facility in place. I've looked into what Santa Monica can do. We are far enough away that we can't sue or protest on possible explosion grounds, et cetera. I think Culver City is closer. They may be able to make different findings than we can, but we're certainly, as a city, we sued over Playa Vista years ago. So we're not happy about what's going on down there. We are aware of it. I also wanted to point out, since this is a Santa Monica-based group, that support for CPA is not forever a given in Santa Monica. There are those who are not happy that we chose 100% renewable and we made that the default. And since we made the choice, there's been significant turnover on our city council. We now have 4 city council members, a majority, who were not on the council at the time that decision was made. So I would ask us all as Santa Monicans to be aware of the need to politically support the sustainability work that CPA represents.
And that's another reason to fill out that survey. The priorities are our priorities. I also want us to not forget that as we are imagining this future together, we have young people greatly involved. Anastasia from Paris today, Daniel Thurman was on earlier, may have had to go back to class. And that's very important, because while they're the face of the future, we are the allies of that future. And we need to think hard about how to address our local city council and all the other channels of understanding, which is one of the reasons we're trying to connect with the schools very deliberately. Not just about the accounts they may have, but about how to understand what Clean Power Alliance as a democratization of energy does mean. How do you read your bill, or any of those other understandings that we all need together. But we'd love to hear if, Amy, did you want to engage more conversation about what people might be thinking they could do to help advance the work that we've been talking about today?
I'm sure, yeah, if you have any ideas, put them in the chat. And I wanted to bring it back to Ted too. I mean, if we're thinking of, you mentioned a couple of times, people tend to stick with what's offered. So when we're looking at two buckets, those that aren't yet in the CPA family that have their city councils thinking about it, what are great ways for us community members, where are resources we could find, what are ways for us to help encourage and nudge our community as well as the council to adopt 100% when they do go in. And then similarly, people that opted to not be part of the 100%, is there a good resource location maybe on the website somewhere that we can help, direct them? Here's how you get the rebate. Here's information on great ways to help add that. You know, it's great for emergency preparedness, all that good stuff. So any ideas on that?
Yeah, great question. So, you know, leadership begets more leadership. And there's a way that when, you know, a number of people take a stand and in fact it works, like people want to join in that. People like being part of the good progressive crowd when they see the impact. So I'm happy to say that, you know, after the 10 initial cities joined in at 100, we had 2 more cities last year decide to change their default rate. So we had an original 10. Last year we moved to 12. That was Malibu and Sierra Madre. And this year, 3 more city councils voted to join the 100% group. That was Manhattan Beach, and Calabasas and Agora Hills. And I think that, you know, our friend in Sierra Madre, our mayor in Sierra Madre just said, you know, for him as a city council person, this was like the single biggest thing he could do on climate action as an outgoing city council member, to get his city on 100 before he left. And he did it, and it worked, and people stayed. And so I think, you know, there's a couple of messages in that. One is that, you know, local leadership matters from our elected officials, but elected officials, you know, have the courage to do that when they're backed by local community efforts. And, you know, I just sat through the Calabasas City Council meeting about a month ago, when they opted up to 100. And, you know, it was more public comment that they had on any item in years, and unanimously in support. And so it really put wind in the sails, and I think that's important to recognize, that, you know, the leadership matters, but leadership doesn't grow in a vacuum. And then in terms of new cities, you know, again, it's a challenging environment right now, but you know, many cities who are thinking of joining, they kind of think of joining CPA and joining at 100 kind of synonymously. Like, why would you join CPA if you didn't join at 100? Now that, again, may be challenging for our less wealthier communities, and so we have to recognize that we need to maintain the big tent as we invite new cities to join. But a lot of the cities that are looking at it do see it as a, you know, the pathway to 100.
And are there a lot of resources on your website that can help people understand rebates that they could share? Or is that something that we as local organizations can help facilitate to get the word out? Not just
so we're, you know, I'm not super proud of our website. The information is always there. It's not always easiest to find. So we're working on that.
And that's where the community advisors can come in too, to help collate that and curate that and get that out. And that's what we're doing.
But, you know, particularly for the PowerShare program, and then when we get the EV program up and running, we're going to have, you know, a lot more robust information about that. But, you know, the information is there on the website. Just have to maybe, I'll admit, take a little bit longer to find it than I'm happy with.
Excellent. I think we have.
You know, I'll just, while you're pulling the last thing up, I just want to note that, you know, one great resource for the whole default question is a woman by the name of Michelle Ellison in Ojai, who has an organization called Green by Default. And that's a website. I'll put it in the chat, Green by Default. She's really picked up on sort of the whole behavioral academic research in behavioral economics that basically says if you give something good to people without asking them, they'll take it. But if you ask them to take something good, they won't. There's been Nobel Prize winning economists who've figured this out, and it's one of the beauties of the CCA model is that you don't have to do anything in this case to do good.
I love it. I love it. And we're getting close on time, so I think we're going to end soon. I just wanted to say we had a couple suggestions as far that have come into the chat just to include into the discussion of other options. So we had, Chris had mentioned we need distributed leadership, and then Stuart had mentioned a resource idea that we had just something simple with understanding the utility bill. I think that would come in handy. I've seen on some Nextdoor chats, people are confused, what part is my solar, what part is CPA, what part is, Edison, or, all these different parts of the bill. I think that stuff would be great. So thank you for adding.
We actually have a new video on how to read your bill. It's not a sexy animated one yet, but it is informative. We'll share that with everyone.
Yeah, please do, Chris. That would be a great resource for this group. It's funny, it's about a 10-minute video, how to read your bill. That is actually more minutes than most people spend in the course of the year with their bill itself. It takes longer to explain than people are willing to invest in looking at it.
Well, maybe that's an opportunity when we're talking about some of the organizations, the smaller organizations. Maybe there is a person, a smaller group out there that has that savvy, that can create that animated short, that knows how to take it from a 10-minute down to a 30-second, bing, bang, boom, here's how you do it. So I put that out there to you, local internet world. If you have that talent and that ability, then we challenge you to create this video for us. So hit us up, we'll get you connected. I see Kevin raising his hand, and then we're gonna wrap this up because we're approaching 1:30. Go ahead.
Well, I just want to stress that the billing continues to be done by SCE, by Edison. We don't do the billing. And frankly, SCE has a vested interest in making it as confusing as possible. I'll give you a concrete example. When you get your next electric bill, you're going to see that it's higher than it was. And that is not because of a rate increase from CPA. We have not changed our rate, but SCE has changed what it's charging you, and it gets reflected in the bottom line. And SCE doesn't really want you to be able to figure that out. So it's not by mistake that the bills are a bit cryptic. It's not entirely under our control.
Excellent. Thank you for adding that. That makes a lot of sense. And with that, I am going to bring this fourth edition of SamoCan to a close. I want to thank our community advisors, Chris Gutierrez and David Hockey, and I want to give a great thank you to Ted Bardacke for giving us this breadth of information. This is a complicated but so important topic. And I also want to thank all of you for attending, or if you're watching this later, thank you for watching. And we encourage more of your community. This is a community effort. This is a global effort. So we want to hear your ideas. We welcome your questions. You can email us if you want to. That's going to be, I'll put that in the chat. And then if you're watching this on the rebroadcast on YouTube, it will also be below in the YouTube video. So please reach out to us, connect with CPA, connect with Chasm, connect with your community so that we can all work together to help